Absolutely. I think if I had a crystal ball, I think my crystal ball would say in 7 to 10 years' time, hopefully we'll have a couple of treatments, not for all types of OA, but at least for some subtypes of OA. I'd like to give patients hope that that's going to happen. And you know, the impacts of the disability associated with osteoarthritis go way beyond just joint and work and physical activity. They have profound impacts on the patient's relationship with their family, with their partner, bosses. Very deep. These are very deep philosophical issues that we've only just started to scratch over the surface. These need very thorough multidisciplinary investigation. And I think we need to consider these aspects. And it's good that we stopped treating osteoarthritis as just a disease of cartilage. That was my entry point to this field. At the point I became interested in osteoarthritis, cartilage was the most important tissue, right? So if it broke down, you regenerated it. And if it went wrong, that's where the problem was. But now we clearly know it's the whole joint and it's the whole system that's impacted on. So I think in 20 years, we've made quite a lot of progress. But we're not making progress with drugs. And drugs are failing at phase 2 and beyond. So I think there needs to be, as you said earlier, there needs to be a greater effort to improve trial design and participation and do them differently. And maybe the disease-modifying drugs may actually come from other disease areas. It's possible the future drugs for osteoarthritis could come from metabolic disease areas. They could come from cardiovascular disease areas. It's already happening. So we should always look to the other disciplines to see what's going on. And biologicals are advancing very rapidly, and the process of repurposing is real. I mean, as real in the last 12 months, who would have thought that remdesivir would actually be approved by the FDA for COVID-19? And that happened very quickly. It was originally designed for viral diseases, for tropical diseases of man. And then it was repurposed for cats with peritoneal inflammation. And then they're repurposed for humans. So that's another important point I want to make is maybe drugs need to be repurposed. Maybe drugs need to fail, put on the shelf, and rethought and repurposed. And I think that's so much investment goes into drug development. I think all drugs eventually find a home, but of course they all have side effects. And as an asthmatic, I was told a couple of days ago that I should not be taking non-steroidal anti-inflammatories because they are contraindicated for my asthma. So I looked in the treatment guidelines, it's not there. So you see, there are gaps, there are important gaps that even as a patient, I'm beginning to recognize. There's no mention of asthma or contraindications with non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. And so if you have chronic asthma, if you're on steroids with asthma, you cannot take NSAIDs, no matter how bad your back pain or hip or knee pain might be.
Yeah, well, and I love the idea of bringing in other disciplines, right? Because we know that osteoarthritis is multifaceted and there is involvement of the inflammatory system, the, metabolic, the connection between adipose tissue and low-grade inflammation and cartilage degradation. It's all there and it's all connected. And so it would absolutely stand to reason that the treatment for this should be in combination with all of those things as well. This is not just something that can be fixed quickly. I think that's, we're seeing. And on the other side of that, there's the patient, the emotional and mental toll that osteoarthritis takes on patients, and our treatment has to treat that as well. So
of course, and choices we make, they must be made in consultation. It needs to be in proper consultation with our healthcare practitioner, it needs to be an ongoing dialogue. It can't be one-sided. So if a doctor came to me or to you and they said, for your osteoarthritis, I have an injection. It's not a corticosteroid, it's a biological, it's an emerging biological. It could give you another 2 or 5 years of additional function and better function out of your existing knee joint, right? What would you say? What would I say? I would probably take it, because I would much rather have an injection or some kind of treatment that preserves my joint. I don't want a joint replacement, you know? A lot of patients tell us that they would rather keep their own joint, but actually some others want a joint replacement, and the psychology of that needs to be researched. Patient needs, and I think that's a very fruitful area for collaboration between our community and psychologists and our social sciences. We also talked about pain, and you talked about those individuals who may develop the signs of osteoarthritis, at least on radiographs, but they don't develop the symptoms. So they don't develop the pain that people with much less cartilage degradation do. So we need to learn more about that in the population. There have to be different thresholds. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure the pain researchers will agree, the thresholds change with time. So, you know, if you were here in 2010, you're going to be somewhere different in 2011, depending on your rate of progression. So the thresholds will change, and we need to get a better grip on that. And I think this is the most challenging thing about developing new pain medications. Where are the patients going to be if they are fast progressors? Right. And how do you treat a population that might be sensitized much more rapidly as that progression goes on?
You know, one of the Arthritis Foundation's missions is to bring sort of the community together, and the researchers, the doctors, the surgeons, the patients, and kind of be able to, you know, reach everybody. And we talked a lot about availability of information. And I think, you know, that falls in line with what you were just saying too, is that we have to get the community together as a whole. And that way we can make progress. And I think you do a lot of work on sort of the science communication side, and sort of maybe you want to talk a little bit about that and how you're sort of reaching out to these communities that are underserved as of now.
Yes, that's a very good point. You know, we get specialized in our areas of research, and we write for the best journals that we can. And then we might forget that there's always that end user. The end user is the patient, and the patient groups, the patients, the policymakers must not be forgotten. And no matter how excellent our clinical science, our translational and basic science is, we need to be able to distill that information in easily understandable and digestible packets for the public, for the lay public, and specifically communicate with the patients. I would say it's even more important now compared to 5, 10, or 15 years ago. One of my reflections is being involved in a European multinational consortium project funded by the European Commission. At the time we were writing the proposal, 2011, 2012, I remember going to the San Diego OARSI meeting, building this consortium in sunny San Diego, and everybody was there from all parts of the world. And of course, at that time, we didn't need to get patient involvement. The project architecture didn't require it. Now, you cannot get any funding from the Commission, European Commission, unless you have patients and patient groups involved. So you actually need to rethink the way you design projects. So, for example, if you're defining a new biomarker, if you want to develop a new biomarker assay, you're advised to get end user engagement as early as possible into your project concept, not after you've come up with the project and written the proposal. Get them involved in the proposal writing.